On episode 311 of today's show, we talk about why you should consider a video podcast to market your video business. We also talk about the secret to creating tons of social content for your own marketing with little effort. And then we talk about the key to getting found and landing new clients. What's up, friend? I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, the show for corporate and commercial filmmakers, where we talk about the business of video production, sales and marketing, processes, procedures, taxes, insurance, all of the things that you need to build a sustainable business. Not the super sexy stuff like, hey, what prime lens are you shooting with? Or what's the next camera that you want to do? Or what's the best way, your favorite way of telling stories? We do talk about that stuff sometimes, but the heart of this show is really like the business of what we do, because that's the part that we probably all need refining. We need more of the right kind of stuff when it comes to building a business that is profitable, that we enjoy, and one that we can do for a long time to avoid burnouts and frustration and crummy clients that don't pay us what we're worth. If that sounds like you and you haven't accessed my free workshop yet, I take my last 18 years of running a video production team and business, a 7-figure video business. I've taken the best of the best and I've crammed it into a workshop where I share with you 3 of the best things that I think if I were to start my business all over, where I would focus my time, effort, energy to build a successful and a sustainable business model. You can get free access to this workshop for a little bit longer. We're going to do something completely different next year. But right now, if you want to access that while you still can, go to studiosherpas.com/workshop. That URL, once again, is studiosherpas.com/workshop. Okay, this episode is the topic is near and dear to my heart because it's about podcasting and Inception. That's what this is, right? This is where we're at here. So I hope you enjoy it, and I've got just a couple things to share at the end of the episode. So stick around to the end. Let's go. Roll the tape. And now. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to this. I was going to say welcome back to this episode, but welcome to the first time to this episode. My guest today is Danny Ozment. Danny is a business strategist and podcast consultant for busy professionals and solopreneurs who want to create podcasts that build brand loyalty and make their marketing efforts more effective. His goal is to help you clarify your message and publish engaging content that creates customers who trust you before they buy. Can't wait to tell the world about you. Danny, what's up, man?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Danny and I.
That bio is copywritten.
No. I actually I shared that from my heart. That was all. All right here. So you're one of the OGs that I got to meet at Mike's event back in Austin. So any avid listener of the show, they'll every once in a while hear Ryan talking about this event, this Mike Kim guy, this 40-person event that kind of changed his whole perspective. And from that event, I came back inspired. I was like, I'm gonna do a small event. And from that, we created the Onward Summit, which has become one of like my absolute favorite things that I've gotten to do with filmmakers from all over the world. It's an international event because people from Canada have come, which is just like, over the border.
That's international.
Yes. So,
Cross the bridge.
Danny is crushing it. Are you still producing Mike's podcast?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. It's my team that does now at this point. But it started out where I was the one doing it 3 years ago now. But now it's my team that's involved in that.
And that was part of my introduction to Mike was through his podcast. I think he had Ray Edwards on his show, and I was following Ray. And then I'm like, man, this guy, like, he's really sharp on branding. And anyway, if come full circle, we got to reconnect in Nashville not too long ago. And tell me, what do you know, all these years into doing podcasts, like what has been like one of the most rewarding parts of this work for you?
You know, I came from the world of music, where I was producing music, and I'd always, you know, I trained to be a musician. I have a master's degree in music. I spent 10 years like working in the nonprofit world. I ran a recording studio for another 5 or 6 years, focusing mainly on music. And I'm like, I'm creating art and I'm doing wonderful things for the world. Yeah. But then I started to realize, you know, especially with how turbulent the last 10 years have been kind of in our country, that I wasn't really doing much to change the world. And I was like, well, I'm not really super outspoken. I don't want to necessarily start my own YouTube channel or something like that, or run for office or anything like that. So I started to think about how I could do more to affect the world, affect change, and allow people to walk in someone else's shoes. And podcasting became that opportunity for me, realizing that, oh, I know how to record people. I know how to make people sound good. I'm listening to podcasts. This is maybe why I'm interested in changing the world, because I'm learning these things. You know, I listen to podcasts all across the spectrum of topics and industries and things. And I noticed that some of the podcasts I was listening to just didn't sound great. Yeah. So I started reaching out to people and you know, saying, hey, can I help you? Yeah. Can I do something to make this sound better? And then I started to realize that, oh, by helping people get these stories out, get these conversations out, that I was reaching now thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people. And so I've been able, that's what's been the most special to me, is to help people that have really good things to say, that are helping lots of people, whether they're helping businesses or not, get their message out into the world so that it can be consumed and move the needle in a way.
I love that. Even listening to you share that, I mean, that's my story. That's like so many of our stories as filmmakers, as storytellers, that you know, we could tell our own story, and there's meaning and impact and whatever there, but to think through all of the stories and the people that we get to meet and the businesses we work with or the families that we work with, and to be able to tell their stories, to craft their stories, because most of us don't actually believe much of our own story. It's just like, no, you know, it's like whatever. But you know, when we you know, pull the curtain back and really start pressing in and asking the right kinds of questions, getting people to talk in a way where they don't feel like it's braggadocious. It's like, well, this is my story. I guess some people might seem like maybe it sounds like it is, but this is what it is. And for people hearing those messages, it is impactful. It's inspiring. Is there somebody that in particular that you've worked with, not to name drop or anything, but where you felt like, like you are fulfilling that destiny, that thing that you really wanted to do, to make that impact?
There is one, there's one client we have in particular. She's a therapist. And you know, she really she had a good system. She was helping people, you know, but she was getting frustrated that she could only see 20 patients a week, 20 in talk therapy. And she created her podcast simply as a way to, you know, not clinically give advice or, but to coach people in certain things that she saw from everyone, like very common issues, very common problems with boundaries or codependency or whatever. And she just started coaching through her podcast. And, you know, 5 years on now, she's got millions of downloads, hundreds of thousands of downloads every month. And that's a lot of people that now are out there living healthier lives, having better relationships, communicating better. that it just, it makes me feel good when I think about the things that she says are reaching so many more people than she ever would have served in her whole career. And she's able to do it as a trained, licensed person, and to help those people. I feel really good whenever I think about that.
Dude,
that one.
I love that. I don't want to breeze over that and just be like, oh yeah, that's a cool story. I mean, I've been the beneficiary. I listened to a podcast episode earlier this week, and one of the guests was a therapist, and she was kind of like talking through these different things. And I'm like, man, she's just the guest. She should have her own show because it was really, really powerful. And just to say to you, to really receive that, she's got her skill as a therapist, right? And she's bringing it to the world. You're bringing your gift to the world, which is to make her sound great and for her to feel like she's leaning on you to make sure that this thing happens. And without you, she would be fumbling and she might not even be doing the show, or it might not be reaching as many people as it could. So the fact that you're in your sweet spot, doing the thing, helping really her connect with more people and have an impact on more people, that it really is a big deal, dude. I know, like, you feel like, yeah, that's good, but like, don't just like, I just want to reemphasize it. People like me, I mean, it's probably not the same woman that you're referencing, but having just listened to an episode and like, wow, that was really impactful, knowing that, yeah, millions of downloads, lots and lots and lots of people hearing her, receiving what she has to offer. Thank you for, doing the work that you are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so here's the deal. Kathleen Shannon, she's just been such a gift to the Studio Sherpas community. She's been on the show. She's spoken at 2 of our in-person events. And last year, her advice to all the filmmakers in the room, right? You've got all these video business owners that we're trying to figure out, how do we market ourselves? How do we sell more of what we do at bigger price, better profit, so that we can build sustainable businesses. And it's hard because we're trying to improve our craft. We're trying to lead a team, and then also we've got to do this like marketing stuff. Like we're trying to do marketing stuff for our clients, or we're trying to, so to even think like, when do I have time? How do I do this? What do I do? Do I start a YouTube channel? Do I, do Facebook ads?
Right.
Do I go on all of the socials? Now, I didn't even think all of a sudden TikTok, well, that's a thing, the last couple of years. It's like, oh gosh, like I was just trying to decide between LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And now there's a whole other one and another one on the horizon. Right. So Kathleen's advice to us was, hey, create a 6-episode podcast for your ideal client. Talk about the problems that video can solve for this ideal client, which I love that, because it's so focused. Instead of feeling like, okay, I'm gonna write a blog post and just like, why video is important. It's like, okay, why you should do video marketing, why that should be part of your strategy. It's like so broad and so generic and isn't going to like really connect with who you probably want to be working with.
Right.
So her advice was this, which I love. And then to think through, like, if you have any kind of an outreach to, potential clients, or as people reach out to you. I had a discovery call yesterday, and after the call, I was kind of like, I'm not sure that they're going to go with us. The conversation went fine, but if I had a podcast episode or some like a resource that I could give him to continue to educate him further on what we do, the value of video, like why he should really consider, whether it's us or somebody else, like these are the things. Having a tool like that, a 6-episode show or something like that, man, I felt like when Kathleen shared that, it was like, there is something here that we really need to consider. What are your thoughts on doing something like that? And my follow-up question is like, because I think it's probably a good idea, how would you recommend, if you do, how would you recommend a studio like ours saying like, yeah, let's pick up, let's do 6 episodes for our target market?
Yeah. And I can step back and say, like, you know, the reason that she's recommending something like that is multi-layered. In the landscape of marketing your business now, you know, we have short, medium, and long-term investments in terms of marketing, right?
That's good.
Or plays. The short term is maybe, let's buy some ads, let's do Google AdWords, let's buy Facebook ads, let's hit this one thing. The medium term is, okay, we've got to be on social media, we've got to be part of that current conversation. Maybe we get some engagement, maybe we don't, but we're there. People see that we're active. Yep. The long term is what I'll say is content marketing, right? It is the YouTube channel, it is the blog, it is the podcast. And I think the most eye-opening thing for me that I ever learned about marketing and audiences is that there are different audiences. Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, well, I want to do a podcast, so I'm going to do a podcast. Or, you know what, I really like being on camera, so I'm going to do, videos are background, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. Or I like writing, I don't like talking to people, I don't like being on camera, so I'm going to write a blog. These days you kind of can't do that. You can't pick just one, where maybe 15 years ago you could pick a blog, you could pick a podcast, and a few years later you could do a YouTube channel, because those audiences and those places were so new, and so you had the pick of the litter in terms of who was going to watch and listen to you. But now there's everything, and there's everywhere, so you've got to be everywhere, because podcast listeners are podcast listeners. They are listening when they're working out, they're commuting, they're making dinner, they're not able to look at anything. So they like listening to podcasts. YouTube people are YouTube people. They like watching video. They like maybe watching shorter videos under 10 minutes. Readers are readers. They're reading wherever they can. They like to read. So you have to be everywhere. And when she recommends something like, okay, do a podcast, part of the reason that podcasts work is they are longer form than most other types of content marketing. You may read a 1,000-word blog and it takes you 5 minutes. Most YouTube channels, I guess, if you would agree, are under 10 minutes, right? And I know, because I have lots of clients that we may release their podcast on YouTube, and if it's 35-minute video on YouTube, they get like 10 views, right. Lifetime, something like that. Yeah. So the podcast is a place where you can go longer, and it's kind of what I was talking about in wanting to get conversations out there and changing the world by sharing stories. It's harder to share long form stories, have discussions, have nuanced conversations in a video, just because you don't have the time. You definitely can't do it in the blog, and there's no interaction there. It's just words on a page. A podcast is the place where that happens. You feel like you're part of the discussion. One of the nice benefits of a podcast is that often the listeners to a podcast build a relationship that is similar to a friendship with the host, because, and I've already heard 2 or 3 different episodes of podcasts in the news and political space this week talk about how we've got to fix this loneliness problem that we have in this country. The Stanford just released a survey that talked about how teens' brains were affected during the pandemic by being isolated. Yeah. And so they're talking about that, and with a podcast, this is something I've known now for 6 or 7 years that I've been working on podcasts, is that people get in their car and they spend 45 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and a half back and forth a day with this person that is not their spouse, is not their partner, that is not a friend, but becomes a friend because they are spending that time. They're hearing them talk. I have this meme that I like to show in some of my talks, where it's this person eating some yogurt, sitting next to an advertisement for the yogurt of like 3 friends chatting with each other, and then the person is acting like they're part of the group. That's what it's like to listen to a podcast, because you're there, but it's a one-sided conversation, but you feel like you're part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so when you as a business create that type of content, where even if it's 6 episodes, even if it's 3 episodes, but it's 15 minutes long, 20 minutes long, you are giving potential clients, potential customers, ideal listeners, whatever, the opportunity to get to know you that they can't in a 5-minute video. They can't in a blog. Yeah. So you get that benefit. Yeah. You get that trust that starts to build. And your follow-up question, how do you go about it? Well, one of the things, I run a podcast agency, Emerald City Productions, and when you read my nice, lovely bio that I think Mike helped me write several years ago, it talks about busy professionals. It talks about service professionals who are trying to establish a relationship. And our bread and butter, our clients are businesses like I think a lot of your video production companies are working with. They are the brick and mortar. They are the service professional. They're the lawyer, the doctor, the chiropractor, the therapist, the med spa, like whatever. They're working with people who need to get clients, but for people to come work with them, they kind of have to have some trust before they can work with them. So a podcast is a great place to do that, but they're busy. And creating a podcast takes time. It's not as intensive, say, as like video editing or something like that. Right. But it is, I've got to think about what to do. I've got to talk for 20 minutes. I've got to line up the interview maybe. I've got to do it. Then I've got to edit it. And I was like, I just don't have time for this. I've got to how do I publish it? Like, where does it go? Because it's not like I can't just upload it to YouTube. I've got to upload it here, and then I've got to make sure that the media host where I've uploaded it and I've got my RSS feed is connected to all these places. And I've probably already gone 3 steps past where most businesses are like, I don't have time to figure that out. Yeah. I do what I do. So one of the things that we have concentrated on, like when we work with those types of businesses, is to find a way, since podcasting is the long form, it is the 30-minute piece of content, it is the 15-minute, it is the 45-minute, it's the hour piece of content, to use that content and repurpose it in ways that will create a lot of other forms of content. That it'll create the TikTok video. It'll create the YouTube highlight video, the 5-minute cut down with nice editing and titles and all that sort of stuff and transitions. It can be transcribed, and an assistant or a VA or a person from Fiverr can take the transcript and write a 700-word blog post that could go up on your site. So we took that model and found ways to take one episode and turn it into all those different things and social media posts and et cetera, so that someone who's thinking about, I need a podcast, what should I do? They have options for using that content and creating one piece of content that fills a lot of different spaces.
Dude, that's I feel like that you don't have to convince me to do a podcast, right? We're on episode 300 something. I've seen the value, and then when we said we've kind of always been doing video, but at one point we were like, man, actually, if we do video, we don't. It's not just the whole thing. Like we can do snippets. Right. When that light bulb went off for us, or when that light bulb turned on for us, it was a game changer, because now we can take this 45-minute long conversation. I can create a 7-minute, like one question I ask you, we can create that 7-minute answer. And that's a helpful one helpful piece of content. Or we can take that 7-minute and grab the best, 60-second snippet from there that's valuable and maybe intriguing to get somebody to say, like, I actually want to hear, like, what is and then they listen to the 7-minute and they're like, this is actually really good. Let's listen to the full episode. Wow, I love this. This is for me. This guy has more than just this episode. Cool. Like, let me subscribe. Let me take the next step. It's doing a video podcast, it's the quickest, easiest way. So if you're trying to figure out what should I do to market my video business, exactly, like, listen to Danny here. He's saying by having, I mean, you're not saying video, but I'm assuming that you would agree
and yeah, that's what we do. We actually go a step further. I have maybe, you know, we've got around 40 clients that are releasing podcast episodes. Most of them every week, a handful of them every other week. And I encourage, and about maybe 25% of them do this, but I say, hey, if at all possible, live stream your recording.
Right. Yeah.
Like, go live, even if you're doing a solo recording and you're messing around and you mess up and say, oh, I'm going to repeat that. Just ignore me if I say that, because the editors are going to fix that.
Yep. So
you have that live audience there. You can ask questions, answer questions, things like that. You've got the video, and I agree with you. Like, if you look at the numbers, and I like to look at the numbers, and I have a really close relationship with Libsyn, which is one of the biggest media hosts in the industry. Like, they just turned 18 years old, so they're legal, they can vote, but they've been around since like 6 months after the first podcast was created. So they know what's going on. They have the most clients, they have the most RSS feeds, so they have really good tracking, and it's really like less than 5% of podcasts at this point are consumed on video. So it's those numbers are dominated by people like Joe Rogan or whatever, who've always done video and have got their studios set up, and, you know, live edge wooden tables with mics coming out of them, and lighting, and a producer in the studio with them. Very few podcasts, however, do that. It's like 95% of podcasts are consumed audio at this point, because most of them are consumed on mobile devices, and that number goes between like 85 and 90%, depending upon the month. So it's good to record the video. It takes us longer to download it when you transfer it to us, but then we have it because we can throw it. Like, most of my editors now have transitioned to using Descript, and they can throw it in Descript, and they can grab a quote and a clip, and then there's the video clip, and we can throw it in the TikTok reel template. And it's ready to go. If clients are paying for multiple, we can do that really easily. We can keep the whole thing in Descript and cut it into a YouTube video really quickly, because I'm one of those people that I was an audio engineer. I tried video stuff for a while, and I was like, I just don't like the way video editing works. It's too, my brain doesn't work that way.
Yep.
And so if I need video editing, I will hire somebody and outsource it. And that's an important point we can come back to. But having a tool like Descript, even someone like me can do a highlight video that is really clean, because I know I can see the words, I can see where the cuts need to be, and it's nice. It can sound good. I can throw the audio back in Pro Tools if I really need to do more mixing and things like that. But it's really good. And kind of what you asked too about, like, besides the starting with video and repurposing and just making it easier on yourself, kind of like you were telling me about one of the programs you have, where people show up and in an hour they record a bunch of videos, you edit them for them, and they only had to do it once. It's the same idea, is that you only need to record the content once. It's the stuff that you're talking about all the time. It's the questions you're answering all the time. It's the content that you want to do. And then why not have someone else do all the rest? Like, that is kind of how we operate. When I sit in that first sales call with clients, I say, like, okay, my goal with what we offer is that you record, and then that's it. I show you how to set up your $100 USB microphone, like the one that I'm using right now and is plugged directly into my MacBook Air. I show you how to set that up. I show you how to record in QuickTime or Windows Voice Recorder or Descript, something that's very simple, no-brainer, and then you're done. Like, literally, you're done, because we, as an agency, offer the ability to, you deliver that recording, and we're going to produce it and publish it, or we're going to produce it, publish it, and promote it. We're going to repurpose it into all those things. Or maybe we're going to go even a step further and be your marketing strategist and create some SEO pillar pages once a quarter and create a PDF that people can download from every episode that gets your email list. Like, we've kind of created this process where one step for you, and then you can choose all the other things that happen. And so, I mean, that's what I would say, even for like the listeners of this show, even if you're a production expert, even if you've got a production agency, a video production agency, you can do a really good job of recording, but I'm sure you have other things to do.
Right.
So why not then outsource that to someone who knows the podcasting space? And that's why we exist at this point, is even for, I'm trying to think, do I have any production people? I used to have a video production house that did a podcast, and they were like, we just don't have time. We're working on other stuff. So it's good, but I want to go back to, like, the reason is that podcasts are different than all the other content that you're doing, and so that's why she suggested it, is that you get that effect, you build that relationship through a podcast that you can't in the other forms of content.
Well, and just so everybody knows, when I did 2 episodes. I recorded my very first 2 podcast episodes. I edited them, I posted them, I wrote the show notes for them, and I was like, okay, what's my average hours for these 2 episodes? What did I spend, including the interview? And it was like 15 hours total. And I was like, this is not sustainable. It was fun to figure it out. But I'm like, I have to hire somebody immediately because I can't do this. The feeling is that, I know production, I know audio, I can make stuff sound good, look good, whatever. So you feel like, it's like it is the disease that entrepreneurs all have. It's like, well, it'd just be quicker if I just do it myself. That's a lie here. Yes, unless you're just taking it right from Riverside, exporting to Descript, and then just cleaning up the very beginning and the end to get rid of like the dead space. Yeah, and your export. Great. Okay, cool. You're going to save time. Otherwise,
that's kind of what I do for my own podcast.
Right. Well, but then that's not even it,
really,
because then you got to upload it.
Or
right. Right.
Yeah.
So very, very early on, I was like, I can't do this. So I outsource it and I get all my time back. Right. So it is so worth it for me to outsource this. I want you to talk about, before we hit record, we were talking about solar panels and the guy that you ended up hiring, because as a video producer, I own this production company. Why does it matter? I've got my work, which I would want to speak for itself, right? I want people to see our work and be like, yes, this is it. But that's not the way that we operate. That's not the way that people buy things. That might be the thing that gets somebody to lean in and be like, oh, wow. But it's this next part. And it's all about, I think, building trust.
Right.
So talk about this solar panel experience.
Yeah. And just to comment on the production stuff, part of the reason I created the model that we have is my experience in music production taught me, like, what is a producer? And if you haven't, there's a great documentary that Dave Grohl did about Sound City recording studio. I don't know if you've seen it. Did it about 10 years ago. Sound City was this recording studio in LA where Fleetwood, like the classic lineup of Fleetwood Mac, recorded their first 2 albums together. Buckingham Nicks was recorded there. Rick Springfield, Tom Petty, like a lot of hits in the 80s, a lot of hair bands. Nirvana Nevermind was recorded there. Yeah. And they have this segment of the documentary where they talk about producers used to be the people that just made sure the stuff worked, that hit record, or the producers used to like line up the musicians and schedule people and things like that. And then it became, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, the producer was the person that was the outside ears. They were okay, that's a good song, but I don't understand what's going on here. That doesn't move me. What if we did this? What if we changed this? What if we moved this verse to the first verse and this one second? And like, that's what the producer became, is the outside audience. Like, how is this going to affect the outside audience? And so we took that approach early on, is that you're too close to your stuff. Yeah.
Totally.
Whenever you record, like if you're recording a podcast episode every week, you are too close to it. You need to give it to someone else first who can say, like, we have times where a client will send us something and say, oh, cut this 5 minutes because we went off on this tangent and started talking about it. And then the editor listens to those 5 minutes, even though they know they're going to cut it. Like, wow, that was a really fascinating story. Like, I laughed, I cried, like, whatever. And the editor says, I think you should leave that.
Yeah.
And the client is like, oh, okay, sure. And then they get feedback immediately from the listeners. They're like, oh, that was hilarious. Yeah. And then people ask a question about it. Like, you've got to have those outside ears, and that can help not only save time, but create better content. So we were talking about, before we hit record, recently we put solar panels on our house here in Orlando. And as you can imagine, in Central Florida, there's probably like 300 solar companies, solar panel, people just starting out, people that have been doing it for 30 years, all across the board. Like I filtered, I went into Google My Business first, and I filtered down for 5 stars or 4 stars and above. And there were still like 300
oh my gosh
results. And so like, what do I choose? So I looked for ones that had certain qualities or certain things were said in the reviews, and I narrowed it down to 3. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I set up calls or meetings with those 3, and 2 out of the 3 actually returned my messages. One, like, I didn't hear from for a month and a half or something like that, because they were just so busy.
Yeah,
and that's the way it is. But so then I had these 2, and I met with 2 of them, and both were really knowledgeable. One guy, like, I got the hard sell from, and one person I got more of like the, hey, this is like the reality. He said stuff to me like, don't buy batteries yet, like for the battery backup, because they're the ones that are the only ones we can buy right now are made in China, and the supply chain stuff is making them really expensive. Don't do that. And I appreciated that. And so they're the company that we chose and we went with, and I liked the guy, and it was great working with them. And I sat him down like in one of our meetings, and I was just like, yo, I would have loved to learn a lot of this stuff from you before I even sat down in the meeting, because you were very knowledgeable. You shared a lot of this stuff, but on your site, there's no blog, there's no podcast, there's no like videos that tell us anything. They were just like cool drone videos that showed what solar panels look like. But I was like, if I'd known some of this stuff and you'd shared it with me ahead of time, I wouldn't have even met with the other groups, because I liked you, I trusted you, and I got that from hearing from you. So that, I feel like for a lot of businesses, they could have those initial conversations ahead of time. And I think that's partly the idea of do a few episodes of a podcast and even just get them on your site, because people will get the chance to trust you. They'll get the chance to understand who you are. But I do want to caution people, because we've been talking about like this limited series of podcasts, and I would be a bad podcast industry expert if I didn't say, well, if you only do 4 episodes of a podcast, that podcast is most likely never going to get a lot of downloads. Okay, so really the only benefit is to put it on your site for when people Google you and find your business and get to your production house, and now they've got something that, well, they could watch a 5-minute video on your homepage and see what's cool about video, but if they could then click over and listen to an hour and a half of episodes, they learn a little bit more, and it's like having that. I like to call podcasting referral marketing on a grand scale, because when you build that trust with the host, when they become your friend, or you at least know the person, and then they say to you, hey, you should do this. Well, that's now your friend telling you, hey, I know someone who can solve your problem. It's me. But I know someone who can solve your problem, and you trust me now, so you should do this. And that's referral marketing. So it really is that. It's putting it on there and getting that benefit. But in the podcasting space, to grow a really successful podcast that gets a lot of downloads, grows organically in the podcast apps like Apple Podcasts, you have to be consistent and you have to keep going. So I want to put that out there too, is that like, don't expect that you're going to do these 6 episodes and everybody in the world is going to find you. However, there is a way that if you are a production agency that serves a very specific type of client or a very specific industry, and you could do a podcast about video marketing for chiropractors that only serve disabled people or people with medical issues. Okay, boom. Yeah. That 6-episode podcast might get found a lot, right? Because I could tell, like, I have a daughter with cerebral palsy, and my wife and I have been talking about, oh, you know, we need to find a massage therapist for our daughter now that she's getting older and as a teen, who works with people with cerebral palsy, that knows the unique issues there. I can tell you right now, if there was a massage therapist that had a podcast for that, I would probably be finding it. And there's plenty of families like that. So that's what you have to do in the podcasting space, is if you're going to do a limited series, you really have, and I would say too, if you're going to do a podcast and keep going, you have to get as focused as possible now. You know, I shared a little bit with you, there's 4 million podcasts out there in the podcast index. I think Apple claims to have 3 million in their directory. They're the largest directory. But at any one time, there's only about 300,000 to 400,000 podcasts that are releasing an episode in the last 90 days. So you can be consistent, you can be active, and if you're very focused, people will find you, because even with only 400,000 active podcasts, right now doing a general topic podcast, oh, video marketing is great, or you should do video production for your business. No one's going to find you, because there's probably already 20, 30 other podcasts that are talking about that. But if you can focus in on a certain industry, or like I have a client right now where he is an entrepreneurial operating system consultant and coach, EOS. Yep. So if you're familiar with Rocket Fuel and Visionaries and Integrators, they have their own product and their own system that they install, and it's trademarked. And he was doing this podcast. He's done 100 episodes of this podcast. No traction at all. Downloads weren't going up. He's like, what is going on? And I first looked at his title, and it was something really generic. Like, didn't even have any keywords as to what he's talking about. It's something like, you need to do that differently, or something like that. That was the title. Yeah. And then I read the description, and it's like, business coach helping entrepreneurs grow there and scale and lead and blah. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a million podcasts about that, at least. So we sat down and I was like, okay, who are your ideal clients? What problems are you solving? Oh, well, I'm helping medical private practices scale, like mid-level medical private practices scale to multiple locations. That's our bread and butter. I was like, oh, okay, cool. We've got your new title, Scaling and Leading Medical Private Practices to Growth. Yeah. And then we came up with some like 2-word, like True Health or something like that. Healthcare private practice. I was like, now that we've got that, I guarantee you, like in a month or two, your downloads are going to triple, because you're now focused in on this industry. So like that's the key, is that you've got to get it out there. You've got to get something on your site to give people the chance to build the relationship. And it could grow if you do limited series, if you really focus the topic down.
Dude, that's gold. That's so good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do EOS. We practice EOS in our business.
Okay, cool. So you know what?
Awesome.
And he was trying EOS to every business was what the podcast was saying. And then I'm like, no, but you want to work with these. So in the podcast space, that's what we need to do. Yeah. Is now your title is this, because a lot of people don't realize you can do a Google search and find podcasts. Yeah. But if you go into Apple Podcasts, if you go into Spotify, the search engines are very remedial. Yeah. Where to be polite, about 85 to 90% of the search weight in those search engines is the title of the podcast. So if your title is The Ryan Show, no one's ever going to find it, because no, it's just not, unless you're Oprah, you can't really put your name in a show and expect people to find it.
least not yet. The Ryan Show is coming.
Not yet. Right.
So I did have Mariana. We posted in our private group, and Mariana had a question, which I think is really exactly what we're talking about with like titling and like being very specific. Her question is like, what are there any other best ways to market your podcast? Like once you launch it, what would you recommend?
Definitely, there are a lot of podcast hosts. They get frustrated because podcasts do not go viral.
Yeah, trust me, I know.
You know, YouTube, because it was built later and is the second largest search engine, it's so much easier to find a YouTube channel. Because of the robust search engine. You know, it's still the #1 way to find a podcast is in a Google search. So, yeah, you can run ads, but you're kind of wasting your money. Whereas if you want to run ads to grow your email list, that's pretty effective because you can run ads to a lead magnet but podcasting, that doesn't work as well. The surefire way to grow your podcast is to, one, concentrate on your current audience, encourage your current audience to help you grow it by sharing. That's why you hear every podcast episode, share, rate, review, tell other people. If you found something helpful in this, make sure you tell someone. Sharing is caring. Because with a podcast, that's the way. Like, that's the chief way. And then the second best way is to borrow audiences. It is, as a podcast host, knowing that other podcasts need guests, going on other podcasts as a guest. So if you're an expert in video production for medical private practices or chiropractors or something like that, like if all you do is do videos for chiropractors, you need to get on every podcast that talks to chiropractors. We work with a lot of law firms. And so when I, like once or twice a month, I go through and search for podcasts that talk to lawyers about building trust through content marketing. And so I search for all these podcasts that are talking to lawyers about marketing in general sometimes. That is the way. Being an expert, borrowing audiences, bringing them back to your podcast, and then also working with your current audience. While also doing things like growing your email list through your podcast, because then that email list can be leveraged to help grow your podcast audience. I like to think of the podcast a lot of times as the mouth of the funnel for everything. You can put it out there. You can repurpose it in all different types of content that can lead into sub funnels to reach your audience in different ways. But it's the way to bring the most people in and get them into the right place in your business.
Yeah, that's really well said. I'm sold. I'm doing it. I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah. Well, 300 episodes.
Yeah. Well, so that's for
you're about ready to quit or keep going.
There have been a couple of times where I've been really ready to quit, but that was probably over 100 episodes ago. I got a spark. I know you've got a couple of different ways for the person that is like, yes, like I want to do this. I don't want to do it all on my own. I need some help. What are some ways that you in your agency can help somebody that wants some help?
Yeah, well, I mean, the best way, like if you just want to have a call to talk about some of these things, the easiest way to work with us as Emerald City Productions is to go to our site, emeraldcitypro.com. A lot of information there about the benefits of podcasting, but also how we work together. And there's a lot of frequently asked questions, but a lot of me trying to help you avoid mistakes. Because a lot of people try to start podcasts themselves and get frustrated. And we even have an industry term, pod fade, for what tends to happen to about 75 to 80% of all podcasters is they get to episode 5, 10, 15, and they're like, man, this is hard work. This sucks. Like 75 people are listening to me. And they lose sight of the fact that 75% of people are listening to 75% of my 30-minute episode each week. So I've got, 75 people in a room that are listening to me talk for 20 minutes. That's pretty valuable if you were thinking in person, right?
Yeah.
So emeraldcitypro.com, you can schedule a call with me and you can kind of see what we do. If you are the gung-ho do-it-yourselfer, you're like, I don't need Danny. I don't need their help. DannyOzment.com/pod is my membership site, where we have, again, I have a full course and a Slack channel group, and we do monthly Q&A calls where if you're going to do it yourself, I don't want you to make the mistakes that 6 months from now, you're going to be like, why isn't this working? And in 2 seconds, I could have said, well, that's because you didn't do this, or you didn't do this. Or you get 2 months in and you launch your podcast and you're like, why is it not an Apple Podcast? And I say, well, it's because you didn't connect it to Apple Podcasts. And here's how you do that. And you got to log in here and you got to have an Apple ID that's been validated and all that sort of stuff. So DannyOzment.com/pod is the place to go to get that.
Very good. Dude, this has been so helpful. I still have probably like 7 other things I wanted to talk around, so we'll have to have you back if you'd be up for
definitely
coming back at some
I'd be
point.
happy to.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much. You heard it here first, folks. We'll have links to Danny's websites where you can get more information. But sincerely, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, friend. Remember, you can access the show notes by going to studiosherpas.com/311. You can get access to the links that we talked about. You can go to Danny's website to get access to the free stuff that he mentioned. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, leave me a comment. Let me know, are you going to start a podcast? Do you already have a podcast? Have you considered it? Why are you considering it? Why are you going to do it? Or why are you kind of like, this is not for me? Let me know. You could also just shoot me an email and let me know, because I really would like to hear from you. You can do that by sending an email to ryan@studiosherpas.com. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a massive favor. Take a screen grab on your phone and forward that to someone that you think would get something out of this. It is amazing. I would be super grateful for you to share the show. I was going to say it's amazing when people do tell me that they have shared the show. But yes, I would be eternally grateful if you shared it. And feel free, if you want to give me an early Christmas gift, you can leave a review for the show over at Apple Podcasts, or I think you can leave reviews on Spotify too. But that would be amazing as well. I appreciate you so much, friend. We've got some awesome episodes to close out the year. And oh my goodness, we've already recorded episodes for the future. For 2023 that I'm really excited about. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming. If you're not on our email list, make sure that you get on there. You can access the workshop that I talked about on the front end of this show. If you go to studiosherpas.com/workshop, that will put you onto our email list, and you can say, I do extra special things for my email list. So if you're not there, go grab that workshop, or if you're not interested in the workshop, just go to studiosherpas.com, and on the front page there, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a place where you can subscribe to the email list. And I promise to add lots of value. I just sent an email a few weeks ago. It was my $90,000 email template, but that was only for email subscribers. So make sure that you get in on the good stuff. And if I'm in your promo folder or your junk folder, spam or whatever, like, pull me out. Ryan@studiosherpas. That is a safe email. You can unsubscribe at any time. And my hope is really to add a ton of value to you and your video business so that you can build the video business of your dreams. That is my hope and my goal. I call that my GOAP. Put those two words together, goal and hope. Okay, friend, that's it for me. I'm going to go sing some Christmas carols, and I'll see you on the flip-flop. Next week's episode is going to be really good. I'm not even going to, trust me. I've already recorded it. It's done. It's ready to go. See you next week, okay? Bye for now.